Good evening, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Ask Abhijit show. I hope you're all doing very well. To those of you who are returning viewers, thank you very much for returning, and I really appreciate your viewership. I do not take it for granted. I know how much of a privilege it is for a single person to pay attention to you, so I really appreciate that. And those of you who are new viewers, welcome to the show. Take a look, and maybe you'll learn something from it, hopefully. What's the purpose of the show? It's to answer your questions. So, how do you ask questions? Some may wonder. You ask questions in today's live stream in the live chat. You ask questions in the live chat. And in tomorrow's live stream, you can ask questions for that live stream in the comments. So that's how it is. And how do you ensure that your questions get picked up? Ask good questions. Ask questions whose answers will benefit all the viewers. That's what this is all about. So, yeah, that's about it. And let's see who all is there on the live stream. I can see lots of people. Geopolitical Dube, Anish, Pranay Kumar, Pawan Kumar Singh, Smita Mishra, Niharika Gupta, Praveen Vishwa, Rohit A, Tathagat Karan, Hala Machadunga, Satish Chauhan, Rohan Gaikwad, Amisha Mishra. Hello, Anahita, Maulana, something. Vishnu Mohanan, Diksha, Bhavsar, Kayatwal, Pranay Paul from Kolkata. Hello, Anish, Pushkar Rai, Soham Kulkarni, Anurag, uh, Deep Ahuja, Surya Pavan, Thani, Zubong Izang. Hello, Mahi Shrestha, Rakshit Mishra, bonsoir. Threat Ripper, Sanket Ganore, Crazy Brain, hello. Mriganka Bonia, Rajat Chopra, hello. Ram Ramji, Pawan Kumar Singh, Raghuveer Solanki, Bharati Edits, Ritvik Yaduvanshi, Shashwat Mukherjee, Rajat Chopra again, Tathagat Karan, and Tushar Kalburgi, Anand Chandrasekharan, Omkar, Shirwadkar, Pushkar Rai, Shailaja, Raj, Lalit, Thani, Xmas, Ymas, Zemus, Herbie on Wheels, Shubhayu, Gautami, and lots of other people. Feminist Slayer, Rishikesh Dash Gupta, Rahul Sood, Gaurav, and everyone else. Okay, so yeah. So let's take some questions. Please ask me your best questions. Sometimes I get comments that I ask you so many questions, you didn't pick a single question. And sometimes I get the complaint that I only take questions from some people. Look, ask me questions that whose answers will benefit the large audience. Everybody who's watching live right now, and who will watch in when it's no longer live. So ask your best questions. Ask questions that interest me, that make me think. And if you know me, you probably know what kind of questions I like to take. So ask me your best questions if you want me to answer, right? I would like to answer everyone's questions, but the objective over here is not to answer everybody's questions. The objective is to give some information and to some extent educate the audience, the viewers. That's the objective of this show. So ask me your best questions, please. That's what I would like to tell you. Now let's take questions. Uh, Pradyumna Amlesh says, is it Genghis Khan or is it Chenggis Khan? It is Chinggis Khan. That's how the Mongols say it. Look, it doesn't matter how the English or the British or the Americans say it or the French say it. What truly matters is what the Mongols say. That is the correct pronunciation. So, how do I put this up? One second. Um, 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 Let me put this up. It's Chinggis. It's actually this way. Check it out. Will it appear somewhere? Yeah, this is the correct spelling that kind of approximates the correct pronunciation. Genghis Khan. That's how the Mongols say his name. Uh, and there are so many examples like this. Okay, uh, I mean, so many names of Indian kings and queens and name places, etc., are mangled beyond recognition by the English language and what the British and the English have written them as. For example, there is a city called Baroda. What is Baroda? It's Vadodara, right? What is Adams Bridge? It is Rama Setu. What is Adams Peak? It is not Adams Peak, it is something else in Sri Lanka. What is Peking? It's not Peking, it's Beijing. What is, I mean, there are a millions. What is Mount Everest? It's Sagarmatha or Chomolungma in the Tibetan language. It's not Mount Everest. So we have to decolonize ourselves. And Yeah, so it's not Genghis Khan or Chenggis Khan, it's Chinggis Khan. That is the correct way of saying his name. Uh, some Shodha Rumi says, why do you not speak Hindi in this channel? This is an English channel. I and why do I generally not do live streams in Hindi, and generally why is everything in English? Most of it, the it's because I'm more comfortable in English. You see, this is called mental colonization. I keep on I often draw your attention to this, that we are all mentally colonized in one way or the other, in multiple ways, and we don't realize it. At least I realize it, and I'm saying it openly. I am mentally colonized. I am more comfortable in a foreign language. That's how I was brought up. That's what the education system, etc., did to me. So I'm more comfortable, more proficient in a foreign language than in the Hindi language. मेरी हिंदी भी ठीक ठाक है, but and there are other issues also, because I learned Hindi in I picked up Hindi from various places and various sources, including movies and TV and the streets and so on. And I don't like speaking a mangled up, corrupted language. I like to speak whatever language I use. I like to speak with good grammar and vocabulary. And when it comes to the Hindi language, it's not really. It's got words from so many foreign sources that I would rather not honor, because that happened through colonization and oppression. There are so many foreign words in the Hindi language. I would rather speak a more Sanskritized Hindi, but I'm not that proficient. So there are multiple reasons why I don't speak Hindi. Okay, and it's not really our national language. The actual civilizational language is Sanskrit, which no one speaks. Everybody has a smattering of understanding of Sanskrit, the vocabulary, etc., but none of us can actually speak the language. Neither, unfortunately, can I speak it. I have some understanding of Sanskrit. I've done some study and all. I would, if I had the option of doing it, I would actually speak Sanskrit instead of Hindi. But I'm not that good in Sanskrit, and my Hindi isn't that great. I mean, it's definitely passable. I can certainly go anywhere in the country and speak good enough Hindi to be understood really well. But you get the point, right? So that's why I speak in English. I know there are benefits to speaking Hindi. If I do a full-time Hindi channel, I'm sure I'll get 10 times the viewership I'm getting here. I know that. But, well, so that's why I don't do it, right? These are the reasons why I don't do that. Now, next, RMS says India is doing very well in the chess Olympiad. They're first in both open and women right now, I believe. Why can't we do the same with the Olympics? Look, chess, if you want to learn chess and become really good at chess, it doesn't cost you a lot. Let's say you are a child in a middle class or low middle class family, one earning member of the family, let's say hypothetically your father earns a reasonable amount of money and everybody else is dependent. So it's hard for most Indians, because most Indians are in this category. It's hard for most Indians to make ends meet. There's a shortage of money. You're one medical condition away from financial disaster at any given point in time as a family. In that situation, how do you expect your parents to invest in any sport that you would be interested in? Let's say you want to become a cricketer. You know, it you need to buy gear for that. Let's say you want to be a batsman or a bats girl, whatever you want to be. You got to buy the gear, right? The gloves, then the whatever else, the protective equipment and the pads, and at least one bat, a helmet, etc., elbow guards. If you want to be a bowler, I suppose it's easier to be a bowler, of course, but most Indians want to be a want to bat. So there is that. If you want to, and then you need access to training facilities, a good coach, and all that. It costs a lot of money to provide for these things. You want to be a shooter, it's going to cost you lakhs of rupees a month, possibly, because, or at least the investment, the one-time investment, the rifle that you need or the pistol that you need, it's going to be quite expensive. Plus, you need the ammunition. Plus, you need a shooting range. All of these things cost so much money. You want to be a tennis player, it costs a lot of money. So when you take all that into account and then you think about chess costs you nothing. You can get all the education, chess education you want online. All you need is to, you don't even need a chess. Okay, you need a chess board and the pieces. That doesn't cost you much. It's a small amount of money. You can even create makeshift chess pieces out of whatever, and draw a chess board on a piece of paper, if it comes to that. So chess is so easy. I mean, it doesn't cost any money to learn chess. It's almost a no investment sport. So that's why Indians will do really well at that, because we are still unfortunately a low income nation, and it's gonna be a while before India becomes a middle income nation and starts getting better at other sports. So that's why we don't do well in the Olympics. Uh, and of course, when it comes to the sporting associations, I'll not even go into the alleged corruption and whatnot, the shenanigans that go on. So there are so many factors. Okay, merit. India is a nation that the governance system, and the establishment doesn't respect merit, and that's why this is something. These are things that artificially keep India down. So that's why chess is something you don't need any real investment to start learning chess, and you can practice against people. You can practice against non-human opponents online, so you can get really good if you have the ingredients, the right ingredients. That's why India does well in chess, and you've got so many youngsters coming out of essentially nowhere almost, right? So many talented youngsters coming up, girls, boys. So good to see. So at least we're a force to be reckoned with in chess, and I think we're gonna sweep most championships going forward. That's good, and hopefully in the future we become a middle income nation, and we are able to see parents investing decent amounts of money in other sports as well for their children's development. So that's the reason. McLovin says, do you think this government will finish this term? I think it could be iffy. Yeah. Look, the current government, as we all know, is a coalition government. The BJP doesn't have on its own enough seats to have a majority in parliament. How much did they get? 240 or something like that. So they have to depend on other parties. They are in a coalition government. These other parties can, at some point in time in the future, possibly be influenced to withdraw support, maybe for internal reasons, maybe because of external factors. Let's put it that. So I think it's going to be difficult. This is a much weaker Modi government. It's a much diminished prime minister that we are seeing, and he is going to perform. He's going to have to perform this time. Otherwise, see, this is probably his last term, Mr. Modi, and if he wants his party to win the next election 2029, which will be good for the country, otherwise we cooked otherwise, right? He's going to have to pull all the. I mean, he'll have to make this his best term. And you also have to ensure that the right person is the face of the next election. Is that going to be possible to do all that? I certainly hope so. It's going to be difficult, very difficult. I mean, if you don't have a majority in parliament, everything becomes much more difficult. So I'm not some political pundit, analyst or whatever. I look at history, geopolitics, and science. I don't really look into the internal politics, but internal politics does matter at the geopolitical level as well. So I hope Mr. Modi's government finishes its 5-year term. I think it's going to be difficult, and I think it's very important for him to make bring in major reforms in the country and take the country significantly forward in this whatever time he has. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster for his party in the next elections. And one of the keys to the political continuity is what Mr. Modi and his government do about Manipur. Because the way things are going, it may be the end. It could very well derail. I mean, it will, unless things are set right in Manipur, it will very, very strongly affect the kind of confidence that people have in the government. By now, see, the problem in Manipur began more than a year ago. Now people are able to see what the real issue is, something I've been speaking about for more than a year. So unless these things are addressed, it will be very hard for the BJP to win the next election. And then we go back to coalition politics, and that's essentially the end of India. We'll never be greater if that happens. So, brr. Okay, Dav P. Mangang says Manipur crisis. Okay, let's talk about Manipur. That's one question by Dav P. Mangang. Geopolitical Dubey also says, what's the current situation in Manipur? How long will native Hindus survive there if the government does not do anything? Right now, I mean, I've the way the government has handled the issue thus far is extremely disappointing. And I think this is something that could essentially end the political career of Mr. Modi. Thus far, his handling of Manipur has been abysmal. To be very fair to Mr. Modi, he did not. It isn't this crisis was not started by him. It's not his fault that this situation happened. The cookie infiltration into Manipur and all that. These pieces on the chessboard have been put in place for a very long time. It started in the 19th century, and it continued after the 1947 independence of India. Successive governments of India brought in more and more cookie infiltrators into India and gave them citizenship. You will see cookies in very high positions in the bureaucracy and all that. Very, very bad situation. So Mr. Modi did not create the problem, but he did not see this coming. He was caught completely unawares, and for 1+ year, he has not had any idea of what to do with the situation. Now you can see they are taking out Assam rifles from Manipur. Yeah, after more than 1 year, I think they seem to be waking up to what the real root cause of all the problems is. I'm not saying the Assam rifles itself is the root cause, but taking the Assam rifles out of Manipur is a step in the right direction. I'll just leave it at that. So the current situation is very bad. Imagine the capital city of a state of India is being bombed by drones. Whatever state you're living in, imagine a situation like that happening. Drones operated by foreign infiltrators are bombing your capital city, dropping bombs on your capital city. That is a state of war, right? That's something that Manipur is seeing. And what on earth is the government doing about it? To be very fair, the situation, Manipur, before the BJP government came to power in Manipur, whichever year it was, in the 2010s, when Mr. Biren Singh became chief minister, before that, I think the people of Manipur have already forgotten how bad things were before that. Encounters every day, curfew, the moment the light starts getting dim in the evening, and curfew until morning, bomb blasts every day, insurgents shooting people and stuff. The situation in Manipur was abysmal. There was no nightlife. People did not go out of their homes after dark. There was AFSPA everywhere. AFSPA was imposed in Manipur in 1958. It is still on in some places in Manipur. I think they're imposing it in more parts of Manipur. AFSPA is a failure in Manipur. AFSPA is something you use for a short, sharp period of time, and then you solve the problem. Since 1958, AFSPA is in force in Manipur. Clearly, AFSPA has failed. But AFSPA is designed to allow the security forces to succeed. Then what's going on? Who was in power all these years in Manipur? And how did things get so bad? So I would not lay. I would rather be very fair and say that the BJP government did not create the problem. They actually tried to solve the problem. Things were very good for 6 years after Mr. Biren Singh came to power. I would not say all the problems were solved, but things were so much better. The economy in Manipur was taking off. People were able to go out at night for the first time in decades, and so on. And then this happens. May 3, right? 2023. And the government is caught completely unawares and off guard. How did this happen? The cookies were supposed to be good, right? So, the native Hindus in Manipur are under attack. They are under siege. They are allowed to stay in only about 6% of the territory of the state of Manipur. It's a disastrous, horrible situation. And the things you do for electoral gains, well, it comes back to bite you in the wherever it bites you back, doesn't it? Now, the solution to the problem is outside of India. It's outside of Indian territory. And this is not some law and order issue. Please understand, this is a geopolitical issue, because the puppet master who is behind all of this is the biggest power on the planet. They want to create an artificial Christian nation out of parts of Manipur, out of Mizoram, out of parts of Bangladesh, and out of large parts of Burma. Cookie land for Christ. And the US is behind this. Even China is on the back foot here. So the civil war that's happening in Burma, that's essentially a proxy war between the US and China. The establishment, the government that's been in power for so many decades, it has historically been pro-China. The Burmese junta government. And the civil war is by all these various ragtag tribal outfits that have somehow unlimited access to arms and ammunition, and who are fighting the Burmese government, who suddenly are all coordinated and they have great leadership and tactics and strategies. How does a ragtag bunch of half-naked tribals suddenly acquire all of these arms, ammunition, all these strategies, tactics out of the best playbooks? Something is in play. And this is designed to affect China as well as India. Could you believe it? Not China to that much of an extent, because there's no terrorism happening on Chinese territory. But India, well, we are under siege. So the situation is very bad. The solution to the problem lies outside of India, lies in Burmese territory. And will the Modi government have the fortitude, let's say, to solve the problem? The solution is a military solution outside of Indian territory. Of course, it's gonna cause problems, because a superpower will then, make all kinds of allegations against India, human rights, blah blah blah. So I think the only solution is if you treat this as a pilot project with another aligned nation, another aligned power. We have to figure out whether the power can be aligned with us. Um, yeah, but so this situation has exposed the incredible power asymmetry and disparity between the US and India. This and what happened in Bangladesh. It's nothing personal that the Americans have against India, nothing personal at all. They're just ensuring that the power equilibrium, power balance is in their favor. Absolutely nothing personal against India. There is no hatred of India or anything. It's just that if you will not ally with us, then we will make sure that we put the right pieces on the chessboard in the subcontinent. And there's nothing you can do about it. They're demonstrating it to India. So what does India do about this? Because our sovereignty is at stake over here. This kind of demonstrates to you, my friends, that India is not a fully sovereign nation. I will be getting comments right now about the Chavda index, right? The geopolitical uh, rankings of nations, the hard power rankings. I have not released it thus far because I'm going to have to amend it. One of the major factors that I take into consideration in the calculations is sovereignty. And thus far, I had treated India as a fully sovereign nation with a sovereignty index of 1. I probably will have to downgrade India's sovereignty ranking, not a fully sovereign nation. Because if you have one of your states that is under siege by foreigners and you're not able to do anything for more than 1 year, then you're not a sovereign nation. So I think I'll have to revise my view of India's sovereignty. India is not a fully sovereign nation. And I think there are many more examples of that. I mean, there's rampant industrial scale conversions happening in this country, and the government is doing nothing about it. There is large scale, industrial scale illegal immigration infiltration happening into India. Bangladeshis, Rohingyas, cookies. The government is doing nothing about it. Maybe it's unable or unwilling to do it. I don't know. And there are so many of our institutions, national institutions, that are compromised and infiltrated by foreign agents, allegedly. And has the government done a thing about it in the past decade? Not so much. So I would say I will have to be realistic and I'll have to downgrade India's sovereignty ranking, which would push India further down the top 10 if we remain in the top 10 in the global hard power rankings. But I've got to be realistic. If I put out an index that is all fantasy and la la land, then what's the point of doing that? So I'm going to have to amend that. And Manipur is the shining example of how India is not fully sovereign. The government of India is not able to take care of the interests of its own citizens. Okay, rather dispiriting, isn't it? But it is what it is. Okay, now let's talk about. Okay, Anish asks this question: what do you think of Israel's recent pager attack on Hezbollah? Uh, Anish is asking that over and over again. So, Anish, I've got your question, and um, okay, so let's take that question. Yeah. So, first of all, how do we know it's Israel that's behind this? Has Israel officially claimed credit, taken credit for this operation that happened? Has the Mossad taken credit for this? I know that that on social media, various Israeli citizens and even reasonably high-ranking people are kind of gloating about this. But do we have any official evidence that Israel is behind this? And does it mean because they have not officially agreed or accepted that they have behind this, does it mean that Israel is not behind it? It's neither this nor that. Here's the deal. So we know what happened in Lebanon. Hezbollah, right? All these Hezbollah operatives were carrying pagers. The pagers blew up. They beeped, and if once these guys removed it, they blew up in their face. If they didn't remove it, it blew up in the belt area below the belt. There is that. Apparently, the Iranian ambassador also had the same thing happen to him. Apparently, he was also carrying a pager, and then the next day, other devices start exploding. So this is an incredible operation that's been carried out. So many questions are still unanswered. Do I believe Israel is behind this? I believe Israel is behind this. But I don't believe that Israel is the only power behind this. Please understand that. I think this operation was too extensive and infiltration of global supply chains for only Israel to be involved in this. I believe the superpower itself would be involved in this to some extent at certain levels. I'm talking about obviously the United States. I think, look, I don't have evidence, but I have a little bit of brain. I think this could be a collaborative effort or operation between the United States and Israel. That's what I think. And it's incredible the way the entire supply chains were compromised, infiltrated, taken over. The pagers are allegedly, no, they're not allegedly, they are definitely manufactured by a company in Taiwan. Now, the Taiwanese company says that there's a company in Europe that has the license to manufacture these pagers in the name of the Taiwanese company. So apparently, these pagers were manufactured probably in Europe, as per the complaint of the Taiwanese company. And then they were routed to Lebanon, but clearly somewhere something happened. Now, these explosions, they were certainly powerful enough to blow people's fingers off, blow people's body parts off, in some cases blind people and all. Some deaths also have occurred. So pretty powerful, reasonably powerful explosions. Now, what caused the explosions? Was it simply the lithium ion batteries exploding, or was there something inserted into the lithium ion batteries? Was a small amount of some other explosive inserted into the lithium ion batteries? And how was it done? We know that lithium, if it is overheated in whatever, under certain conditions, lithium ion batteries are known to burn. We know that they burn, but they don't really explode in this manner. And even if they burn explosively, the explosion isn't something that will blow people's fingers and body parts, etc., off. Or have they found a way to make lithium ion batteries behave in that manner? Or did they insert some kind of substance, some kind of explosive material? If they did insert some kind of explosive material, that must have been a really powerful explosive, not the standard RDX that Indian experts like to talk about. It's not plastique, it's not the RDX that the Indian experts like to talk about. It's something completely unknown thus far. And the next day after the pager blasts, Other devices started exploding. iPhones started exploding. Do you know the kind of specter this raises? Governments worldwide are going to take very, very serious measures now. They're going to have to rethink airport boarding procedures. They're going to have to rethink everything. I have seen so many world leaders, without taking names, who use iPhones. Isn't this a message that the whoever has carried out, they're sending a message to leaders all across the world? Your phones are not merely listening to you 24 by 7. They can be used to take you out. That's the message they're sending to people across the world. So generally we know almost everyone in the world today carries a cell phone, right? It's with you, it's on you, on your person, almost 24 by 7. When you sleep, it's right next to your pillow or wherever it is. It's always right next to you. If your cell phone is a Chinese made cell phone, the Chinese government is listening to you and taking all your data. We know that. If it's a Taiwanese or South Korean cell phone or Western cell phone, then the US government is listening to you 24 by 7 and taking all your data. Now, they may not be listening to you like as in a person listening to you, but everything is being recorded. And if needed, they'll listen to you. And in some cases, in the case of some individuals, high value individuals, they may actually be listening to you in real time, as in a human being may be listening to you in real time. So we know that the Chinese and the US, they have been eavesdropping on the entire world and taking all, scraping all the data and so on. But now we have realized that at least the West has the ability to take out individuals through their cell phones or whatever other devices. It is going to change the way security agencies look at everything. It's going to put a whole new fear of the gods in the minds and hearts of world leaders. It's going to cause a whole rethink of everything security measures when it comes to world leaders and important people, airport procedures, everything. It's a message they've sent to the world, and also they've taken out Hezbollah. And what effect does it have on Hezbollah? It's a disaster for Hezbollah. They don't know what to use now. Can I use my toaster? Can I use my blender? Can I use my air conditioner? They have no idea what to do now. Paralyzed. They don't know whom to trust. Clearly, there were people within Hezbollah who were compromised. Clearly. If you think about it, there are whoever did this has assets within the Hezbollah leadership. At what levels, we have no idea. High, low, maybe multiple levels. So the Hezbollah operatives don't know whether they can trust their leaders. If they are being told to go and do certain things somewhere, am I being sent to my death? And the Hezbollah leaders have they no longer know whom to trust in their minions down the line, lower down the ranks. And imagine the kind of effect this has on the morale of Hezbollah operatives. So it's a tremendous victory for Israel. Clearly, tremendous victory. October 7 last year was their worst intelligence failure. This will do. It does not entirely, wash away the blemish to their reputation, but it has. This will go a long way towards restoring the reputation of the Israeli intelligence services. So, yeah, that's what I think about this. Lots of questions that will remain unanswered maybe for decades. How they did this, what kind of explosive was involved in this, or was it the lithium ion batteries themselves that can be engineered to be remotely detonated? Lots of questions are unanswered. But yeah, big victory for the Israelis and big victory for the US as well, I'm sure, because the US gets to tell the world indirectly, look, this is what we can do to anybody. So that's how I see it. Okay. Jitu Chetri says, what's the role of Marco Polo in Kublai Khan's victory over the Yuan dynasty? Excuse me, sir. Kublai Khan belonged to the Yuan dynasty. Okay, let's Google Yuan dynasty. Shall we? Let's Google Yuan dynasty. It's a conquest dynasty started by Shri Chinggis Khan. Yuan dynasty. Look, what does Wikipedia, which is not always reliable, what does it have to say? The Yuan dynasty was a Mongol led imperial dynasty of China and a successor state to the Mongol Empire. It was established by Kublai Khan, the fifth Khagan emperor of the Mongol Empire from the Borjigin clan, and so on and so forth. Okay. So, this dynasty that you are referring to, it was Kublai Khan's own dynasty. And it is said that Kublai Khan established it, but Kublai Khan gave the credit to his grandfather, Chinggis Khan. And according to the Mongols, the first emperor of the Yuan dynasty was Chinggis Khan himself. The second was, uh, what was his name? Chinggis Khan's son, Ogodai Khan. And the third was Kublai, and so on. So, Kublai Khan did not defeat the Yuan dynasty. Kublai Khan essentially founded the Yuan dynasty. Right? And he was the emperor of all China, a Mongol emperor. So please understand how things actually are. Kublai Khan did not, well, he had no great victories except for unifying China and all that. The great victories were done by his grandfather and his uncle, grandfather Chinggis Khan, uncle Ogodai Khan. And Kublai Khan essentially inherited China when China became available after the death of Ogodai. Long story about all the politics that ensues in dynasties and empires and so on. And Marco Polo was just an observer in his court, an Italian merchant who had traveled all the way to China, and he wrote about Kublai Khan and so on and so forth. And that's the thing. I don't know. There is some TV series, right, in which they give a lot more credit to Marco Polo for God knows what stuff. I haven't watched it. I don't really watch that sort of thing, but so that's the deal. Okay, Kublai Khan was the founder of the Yuan dynasty, which was a Mongol dynasty that ruled China. Other says, how can expressways transform India? How can this speed up India's economic growth by bringing in manufacturing companies? Look, the more interconnected a nation is, and the faster transportation is, the better the economy will perform. The Japanese economy, it really took off after the introduction of the Shinkansen train system, the bullet trains, I think in the 60s, early 60s onwards, that really made the whole of Japan accessible to uh, its citizens. You could travel from the north to the south of Japan in just a couple of hours, essentially. That's how fast these bullet trains are. I may be over exaggerating a bit, but you get the point. So, when you have a nation that is thoroughly interconnected, let's say I am sitting in, let's say, Bhubaneswar in Orissa, and I wake up in the morning and I say, I feel like going to Dibrugarh in Assam. Is it possible for me that morning to take my phone, book a ticket or bus, train, whatever? Let's say bus or train. Let's say bus. Book a ticket for Dibrugarh, for a bus to Dibrugarh, or a train, let's say. Is it possible, or will I have to be put on some waiting list which will go on for weeks and all that sort of stuff? So if you have a country that gives you the option of doing that, wherever you're in the country, you wake up in the morning and you decide on a whim that I want to go to the other end of the country, some small town. And if your country gives you the options of booking a ticket on the spot, and in a couple of hours being on a train or whatever, that country's economy, I promise you, will be doing superb. So expressways can transform India's economy. They will not bring a din for the people. You understand? They will transform India's economy. They will not transform living standards. They will certainly speed up India's economic growth. The more high speed expressways you have, with hopefully no toll. I think these uh, toll booths and all, they slow things down, and I think the government should absorb the cost of all these things. Actually, that's what I believe. But whatever, at least we have these expressways. So the more expressways you have that interconnect India, the better India's economy will doing. We need expressways, we need high speed rail systems all across the country. We need more and more airports. Every town of India should be connected by airports and so on. The more we do this, the faster India's economy will grow. But it will not change your living conditions. For that, you need your local governments to wake the hell up, and they won't right now. At least most places, not much changes happen in the past 10 years. Okay, let's see what else we have. Halla Machadunga. Halla Machadunga says, will there be a Cold War 2.0 between China and the US in the future? Excuse me, Cold War 2.0 is here. We are in the middle of Cold War 2.0. It's not going to be there in the future. We are in the it's there right now. There's a whole trade and tariff war going on between the US and China. There's a whole bifurcation of the global order that's happening right now. Of course, wherever, as ordinary people sitting wherever we are, we see no difference in our daily lives, right? You wake up, have breakfast, go to work, 2 hour commute, you spend 10, 12 hours in your office, you come back to home, another 2 hour commute, you crash into your bed and go to sleep. Next day, you do rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And maybe if you're lucky, Sunday you can spend some time with family or whatever. That's typically how you spend your life. If you're a student, it's the same grind every single day of memorization and being grilled by your teachers and doing whatever you do as students. So you don't see what's happening outside. But there is a Cold War happening right now between the US and China. The Americans, it started with Trump. Trump started it, President Trump, when he was in power in the US. I mean, he was in office in the US, he was never in power. But he started the trade and tariff war. And and Biden's regime, or whoever's running the Biden regime, they continued that. They took it further. And the Chinese responded, retaliated whatever way they can. So there is this thing going on right now. And after 2022, the Ukraine special military operation, Russia and China kind of coalesced into a single bloc from the Western perspective. Obviously, there are big differences in the one. We'll not go into the details. So there is that. And there are nations like North Korea, Iran, Syria, so many others that are kind of on that side. So you're seeing a bifurcation of the world order. The Eastern Bloc, which is Russia, China, and plus, and BRICS is an example of that. Many nations want to be on board of that. So the BRICS plus or Russia China plus axis or alliance, whatever you call it, would like to create a separate world order, separate from the US led world order, which the Americans like to call the rules based international order. There are no rules in that. Whatever the Americans say is the rule on that day. But that's the nature of geopolitics. That's how the world has always been run. Nothing has changed. The most powerful nation decides the rules, and everybody else has to follow the rules. That's the rules-based world order. So there, we are seeing a bifurcation of the world order. So the Cold War is here. Please wake up. It's here. You're seeing, the Americans have imposed these sanctions on the Chinese, the semiconductor sanctions. They've imposed every single sanction in the book on Russia. Isn't that a Cold War? So it's ongoing. It's happening right now as we speak. And we are kind of in the middle, India. Which side do we take? Well, we'll take the side of whoever is best for us. And right now, the Americans aren't really good for us. They are causing mayhem in our neighborhood with the objective of destabilizing India and slowing down India's economic growth. So, what can I say? Vikram Geopolitical says, what are your views on Iran's religious leaders' recent comments on India and calling it an enemy of Islam? I think it's unfortunate and unnecessary and pointless and counterproductive. Why do India and Iran, or why do Iran and India need to be on bad terms? I don't understand why you would want to have that. What's the point? What does Iran get out of this by antagonizing India? What purpose is served by this? I don't understand it. What do I think is behind this? I think the Chinese are behind this. I think the Chinese, look, The Chinese and the Iranians have a 25-year strategic agreement. And the Chinese are investing billions, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars worth of money into Iran's overall economy, mainly for purchasing reasonably cheap oil. And the Iranians need the money. The Iranians need China on their side. And I think, considering all that, maybe China is behind this. They may have instructed Iran to make this statement. Now, why would China do this? Right now, China is all conciliatory towards India, isn't it? In case you haven't noticed, all their statements are rather positive. The Global Times has given up its that strident tone towards India. They even published an article about India's foreign minister and very rapidly deleted it so that they don't offend India. The Chinese, on their own, are being very, very positive, very conciliatory towards India, because it may be that India and China may need to cooperate on a variety of matters, because both of us are facing the heat from the US. So the Chinese always like to play games. Okay. So one of the major impediments towards an India-China better relationship, not reconciliation, but better relationship, is China's behavior. And the Chinese will have to normalize once again the situation in the northern border, the India-Tibet border. They uh, they have to withdraw from some forward positions they have occupied since 2020 and so on and so forth. And that's a progress. That's something that's still ongoing. Apparently, it's happening on an urgent basis. But that kind of is a step back. It's a walk back. It's kind of a loss of face to some extent for China. So they'll try and needle India through other means. So I think, I have no evidence to back this up, but I think the Chinese are behind the Iranian statement. And I think from Iran's perspective, it's completely pointless, needless, counterproductive. India and Iran should be on good terms. It makes sense for India and Iran to be on good terms. But here we have it. So I think it's completely, it's very unfortunate. There was no need for them to do this. I mean, what? So I think it was really, really unfortunate and pointless and counterproductive. Swati Chandra says, recent Kashmir elections, what are the positives from geopolitical view? None. I get the feeling that the government of India was pressurized into doing this. There was no need for these elections. But here we are. We're going to have elections, and whenever the results come out, I don't think this is good for India. Ladakh is now a union territory, and Jammu and Kashmir are also union territory or something, right? So why do you? And they're not supposed to have an assembly. It's gonna bring back the old forces in power, the anti-India forces. What should have happened is Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh should have been trifurcated, and all three should have been declared union territories. Now, by having an assembly and all that, you're going to have the same old tired faces back in some kind of power, and maybe they'll try and find a way of attempting to repeal, to bring back Article 370 and all that. This is like going backwards. There was no need for this. I think the government of India has been pressurized, coerced into doing this, and maybe certain Indian institutions themselves are responsible for this. So there are no positives, in my opinion, from the geopolitical view. We can see that this government, Modi 3.0, is a much weaker government. And these are not good developments for India. Okay. Let me try and scroll through some questions. And cricket. Okay, let's see this. Vidhi Maniar says, since childhood, I've been able to see the root causes of problems and share an understanding of history similar to yours. How can I use this intellect for Bharat if it seems of no use? Look, if you have this sort of understanding, you can use it for serving the nation only if you're in a position of power. Without that, you're an ordinary citizen. And we have 1.4 billion of us, isn't it? So you may have some special talent. It's very rare for people to have special talents. But if you have a special talent, you have to find a way to position yourself, to place yourself in a position of power. Only then can you use the leverage that power gives you to to serve the country in a suitable way. Um, so that's the answer. You have to be in a position of power to use this intellect and this ability for the cause of the nation. Otherwise, you're one of the ordinary citizens like everybody else. Okay. Avinash says, why is the chicken neck corridor so thin? Did it had GP regions? I don't know what that means. The chicken neck corridor. Okay, let's take a look at the map. Oh, we haven't opened the map yet. It's almost 1 hour in. Yes, the map. Oh, okay. Let's go to the chicken neck corridor, the Siliguri corridor. Why is it so thin? It's about 20 to 23 kilometers across, right? 24. It depends on how you measure it. Less than 25 kilometers. It's a strategic choke point. It's a very vulnerable point geographically for India, strategically. And if any enemy wants to cut off the far east of India from the rest of India, that's what you would want to take out. That's what you would want to attack, the Siliguri corridor. So why is this Siliguri corridor, the so-called chicken's neck, so thin? It's because your so-called founding fathers accepted this map of India. There was no need to accept this map of India. There was no need to accept the partition of India. And if you want to accept all these things, then you could have done it on your terms. But no. So these individuals who are portrayed as our founding fathers and leaders of the nation and all, they accepted this map of India, and they have saddled you all with this gigantic problem. That's why it's so thin. There was no need to accept it. And today, I'm not sure if the government of India is powerful enough to change the map at this point in time. It would make a lot of sense to change the map by incorporating Rangpur and Rajshahi into Bharat. We should do that, but probably we are not strong enough to do that. Why? What do I mean by that? Do I mean that the Bangladesh military is too powerful? India is too powerful for India's army? No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that Bangladesh is now East Pakistan. It is a vassal state of the US. And if you lay a finger on the Bangladeshis today, the Americans will intervene and make life very difficult for India. So India, Bharat, is a very large and reasonably powerful nation in the subcontinent, but it is surrounded on all directions by either hostile nations or proxy powers, proxies of other more powerful nations. And that's why India has always been, despite having such a great geographical position, a nation that has underperformed and punched below its weight. And we have had such wonderful governments that when we had the opportunity to do things, we did not take those opportunities. We had decades in which we could have constructed roads all the way into Southeast Asia, from places like Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, etc. We did not bother to do that ever. Why don't we have roads? Why don't we have a rail line to Singapore, passing through Manipur or Mizoram or Nagaland? Why don't we have a road all the way to Bangkok from, let's say, More in Manipur or Nagaland or wherever you want it to be? Why don't we have a road network, rail network that connects India to Southeast Asia? Our governments had decades to do this, invest in these things. We never did that. So we are like a landlocked country. So it's not just our so-called founding fathers who are to blame. It's all the governments who have come after that. All. Okay, I'm not excluding any of them. All. Such disappointing leaders we've had. Mediocre people at best. Okay. Let's take some other questions. Okay, Shaswat Mukherjee says, how did Adolf Hitler lose the war? Is it because of his attack on the Soviet Union? Not spending on submarines, but big on warships. Uh, okay. The last part of the question made me raise my eyebrows. Not spending on submarines. The Germans invented the submarine. The Germans had truckloads of submarines. They were called undersea boats, U-boats. They had hundreds of U-boats. The Germans. So it's not like they did not spend on submarines. They had the best submarine fleet in the world. Um, they also had reasonably good big warships and all that. Why did Adolf Hitler lose the war? Uh, he did not lose the war because of his attack on the USSR. One of the reasons was that he did not go straight for Moscow. He went for the south, the southern part of Russia, the Ukraine, Crimea region, which is rich in oil and gas. And Hitler thought, if I secure this part of Russia, I'll have uh, I'll have no problem accessing oil and gas for the remainder of the war. So Operation Barbarossa started with the German army going for Moscow, and then they decided to go southwards instead of going for Moscow right away. That's one factor. And then, well, there's that strategic miscalculation, that strategic blunder was rewarded by all the miseries that the Russian winter brings upon you. So the Russian winter was not the reason for their loss in Russia; it was the punishment for a big mistake. Uh, then they did not go for. See, the Germans took all of Europe. They took France. They took everything else, but they waited too long to make a move on the UK. They should have done it, perhaps. That's another reason. So multiple reasons there, but the real reason is that the US came into the war. Um, and the US had essentially inexhaustible resources because of they occupy an entire continent, essentially North America. They also had access to the Canadian resources. Canada is a vassal state of the US. It's like a puppet of the US. So they have an entire continent's resources, and the war effort or kickstarts their economy again. They were, 1930s were the big recession of the US. The war actually kickstarts their economy, and the Americans very rapidly established power projection capabilities that were beginning to become global in nature. They started controlling all the supply chains and everything. That is, these logistical things are the critical aspects that change the outcomes of war. So I think Hitler lost the war because of a number of strategic mistakes, miscalculations. Also because a new power, the US, with inexhaustible resources, entered the war. The Germans could not damage the US homeland, could do a thing about it. But the Americans could damage Germany, and slowly they crept forward after the landings in Normandy. And also because Adolf Hitler made too many enemies, he kind of made the same mistake as Napoleon, trying to fight everybody at the same time. Once you establish control over certain territory, instead of holding it, you keep on expanding further and further and outwards and outwards. Eventually, you're gonna run out of space to expand, especially when you are a nation with not that great amount of control and resources. So multiple mistakes. There's no one reason why Nazi Germany lost the war. It's a combination, it's a superposition of multiple mistakes all together that contributed to their defeat, that caused the defeat. Abhinash Acharya says, do you think India's GDP per capita would be anywhere close to top economies anytime soon? Obviously, it's impossible to have it anytime soon. India's GDP per capita is what? $1,000 per person? $2,000? I'm not sure what it is. Let's Google it. Let us Google India's GDP per capita, okay? Let's go to Google. India GDP per capita. Okay, wow, I'm pleasantly surprised. It's 2,400 US dollars per capita. And we are being compared with Bangladesh and Pakistan. Fascinating comparison. What about China GDP per capita? China is 12 So it's about 5 times that of India, right? India is 24, China is 12.7. So about five, roughly 5 times that of India. What about the US? The US is, excuse me, 76. Now, this is a top economy, right? US is a top economy. What about the UK? UK is 46. Boohoo. Japan? What about Japan? Sorry, not Japan. Oh, it's Japan. The Japan is 33. What about Singapore? Singapore, 82. Good God. UAE, 53. Okay, one last one. Russia, 15. Okay. So when we talk about top economies, let's just take the example of the US. It's $76,000 per capita. India is 2,400. Do you think India can go from $2,400 per capita to $76,000 per capita anytime soon? I think you can answer the question yourself now. Not anytime soon. It's going to take decades, it's going to take generations of hard grind, hard labor for India to achieve this, if it is ever going to be achievable at all. Then also there is no guarantee. That is the situation today. You have to be realistic, and that's the reality. Hani Sharma has been asking this question for many weeks, so let me take it. And there's a reason I did not take this question before, because I've answered the question. Could India fake an attack on itself to enter Bangladesh, similar to Operation Northwoods in 62? This might prevent Uncle Sam from opposing sanctions, and India might have a changed map. India cannot do a thing against Bangladesh right now. Whether India faces a fake attack or a real attack or whatever it is, the Americans don't care about what's right or what's wrong. They care about the balance of power. I have answered this question multiple times. India is not in a position to do anything about Bangladesh and redrawing the map, like you're saying, anytime soon. As long as Bangladesh is a US vassal. And it's a newly minted US vassal. Even if, let's say, hypothetically, in a fictional universe, India fakes an attack upon itself from Bangladesh, you think that the Americans will say, oh, yeah, now you have right, just cause for war. Please go ahead and change the map. You think that's how the world works? The US doesn't care about who's right or who's wrong. The US wants a certain balance of power in the region. Do you think the coup in Bangladesh was the right thing to do? Do you think it was legitimate? Do you think it's justified? No, it's not. But the Americans still did it. Do you think that they care about right and wrong? So the point is, we have to be realistic. We have to understand how the world really works. The world doesn't work on the basis of who's right and who's wrong. In the world, there is no justice in the world. If you want justice, you have to make your own justice. No one's going to give you justice. Just because you say, oh, they attacked me first, so please allow me to change the map. You think they're going to allow India to do that? No. The only way India will be able to, in the future, if it ever happens, to change the map, the only way it happens if India becomes so powerful that the Americans can oppose India changing the map. The only solution is India becoming much more powerful than what it is today. Right now, India is not a powerful country. Now, India, I do not even consider it to be a fully sovereign country because of what's happening in Manipur and other things as well. So India is a weak country right now. Just having a reasonably decent economy doesn't make you a powerful nation. There's so many factors involved in this. So the moment India touches Bangladesh, it's going to be problems with the US. Understand? Okay, Gamer Babu says, please tell how and which nation will help in Burma operation. I am unable to understand. Please tell in detail, sir. Kindly help. Okay. We discussed Burma. Let's kind of go over it again. Who will help? Nobody will help. Nobody helps. There's no free lunch in the world. The situation in Burma is that At least 50% of Burma is under non-government control. There's a civil war going on. There are lots of different, let's say, insurgent groups that are fighting against the Burmese government, which is based out of Naypyidaw. Uh, and the Burmese government historically has been a pro-China government because China is a powerful nation. India has never, you know, courted Burma or been able to offer Burma what the Chinese can offer. So the Burmese government, the military government, has historically been pro-China. There was a brief time when Aung San Suu Kyi's democratically elected government was in power, but it's no longer there. It was kind of a pro-US kind of government to some extent. But then, okay, that's a whole different issue. So now there's a civil war raging in Burma. And all these insurgent groups or anti-government groups, tribal groups, most of them are supported by the US. And they are somehow getting endless quantities of arms and ammunition. And this is affecting Manipur also. It's something the US is doing. So right now there's a civil war happening in Burma. It's essentially a proxy war between the US and China. And it's not causing terrorist activities on Chinese soil thus far as we know, but it is certainly affecting Manipur in a horrible way. That is the situation in Burma. Now, okay, now perhaps I'm beginning to understand your question, Gamer Babu. So now I said that this solution to the Manipur conflict, to the foreign terrorism in Manipur, the solution lies outside of India, right? Because the terrorists are coming from Burma. The terrorists are the cookies, who are not even Burmese. They don't speak the Burmese language. They don't practice Burmese culture. They don't even respect the Burmese culture. They're not even Burmese, okay? The cookies. And they want to create a new nation, Cookie Land for Christ. So I said that the solution to the problem is a military operation outside of India, which is Burma, right? But this will have to happen with another nation that is aligned with us. And the question, now I'm able to understand the question. Gamer Babu is saying, which nation will help in the Burma operation? Well, it's obviously not Burma. Burma is under threat. Burma is in crisis. Burma is under attack. Which other nation did I just mention just now is affected by the civil war in Burma? Which other nation, apart from India, is affected by the civil war in Burma? I just answered your question. That's your answer. If it ever happens, no guarantees. Okay? If you want, you can rewind this after this live stream is over. I gave the answer just now. Okay. Malik says, why is no one talking about Putin using bomber in Ukraine, allegedly killing 15,000 troops? Well, I am not talking about it because I haven't heard of it. Am I out of touch with what's happening in Ukraine? I myself haven't heard of this. Putin using a bomber in Ukraine, allegedly killing 15,000 troops. It's not impossible. And if such a huge loss of troops happens, it will obviously be Ukrainian troops with some Western troops thrown in, obviously, smattering perhaps, or maybe, I don't know what it is. So I haven't heard of this thus far. And maybe after this live stream, I'll go and check it out. Where have you heard this? Let me quickly go and do a Google search. Putin using bomber in Ukraine. Ukraine, 15,000 casualties. Really? Watch Putin's kamikaze. 15,000 Ukrainian soldiers. There are some YouTube videos that talk about this. Okay, let's try and do some tools anytime. Let's say the past week. Okay, the Russian Defense Ministry announced it has inflicted nearly 15,000 casualties on Ukrainian troops and destroyed over 122 tanks since the Kursk incursion began in August, and the Russian counteroffensive took shape early this month. So it's not a single strike, and it's not a bomber. It's a multiple. It's multiple weapons that have obviously been used. It's once again. Let me put that back on the screen. It's not a single strike. It's not a strategic bomber or any kind of bomber. It's 15,000 casualties roughly on Ukrainian troops in the ongoing fighting since the Kursk incursion began. Okay, so that's the deal. Um, and yeah, so I think that's what the Times of India seems to be saying here. 15K troops killed in Russia's Kursk revenge. Okay, okay. I get what you're saying. Okay, so this. Okay, I was not aware of that particular claim that they have. That there's been 15,000 roughly casualties on the Ukrainian side. But yeah, that's the nature of warfare. People, it's troops die, unfortunately. So yeah, so it's not bombers. It's. I'm sure there's artillery. There's this hand-to-hand fighting. There is sniping. There is small arms fire, small arms firing, grenades, all kinds of weapons that would have cumulatively caused these casualties in case this claim is correct. Okay, so in warfare, in this war especially, there's been so much disinformation, misinformation, claims and counterclaims. It's really hard to know whom to believe. At the end of the day, you have to either believe someone's claim or not. The Americans say that 300,000 Russian troops have died. They made this claim into, like, we just saw this, right? Scrolling, one of the headlines was that 200 or 300,000 Russian troops have died in 1 year. That's the claim they had made in 2023. I think that's a nonsensical claim because Russia is stronger than before. Russia is stronger than ever, and they clearly have the upper hand in the war. So those claims clearly are hard to believe. This claim that 15,000 Ukrainian troops roughly have died after since August, it is more believable. More believable. But once again, it's a claim, and nobody. I mean, there's no way to corroborate it. So that's the situation in war. It's the fog of war. It's always hard to know what to believe, whom to believe. Vikram Geopolitical says, why are Southeast Asian countries not so significant in global politics despite having a good population and economy? Because it's not enough to have a big population and a good economy. You look at Brazil, huge nation, reasonably big population, top 10 economy, geopolitically insignificant. With all due respect to Brazil, I like Brazil. I really like Brazil. But unfortunately, that's the case. It's not enough to have a big population. It's not enough to have a big territorial area. It's not enough to have a big economy. Your military muscle is extremely important. Your power projection capabilities are extremely important. And it doesn't, it helps to have nuclear weapons. And when it comes to the Southeast Asian nations, once again, let's go to the map, which is the largest Southeast Asian nation. We'll discover together. I think I know the answer, but let's discover together. Which is the biggest Southeast Asian nation? Clearly, it's Indonesia, right? Large territorial area, large maritime area as well, a big population, and a reasonably good economy. But militarily, I'm not sure how powerful Indonesia is. Clearly, it's not very powerful militarily. I'm sure they can defend their territorial integrity and so on. But that's about it. They don't have nuclear weapons, and they don't have the biggest military, most powerful military. When it comes to other Southeast Asian nations like Thailand, Vietnam, etc., Philippines, Burma, we spoke about Burma. Look, these are reasonably small nations with reasonably small economies. GDP per capita will be reasonably good compared to India, I'm sure. Living standards will be better than India for sure, for a variety of reasons. But no nuclear weapons, no power projection abilities beyond their own, near abroad, and no, all of that combined. So that's why they are not so significant, and obviously no power projection abilities. So these are the reasons why they are not significant in global geopolitics. Okay, let's okay, Rahul says, do you think Prime Minister Modi is visiting the US to meddle in the election in some way? Look, India will have to be a really, really different kind of country before it's able to meddle in US elections. Um, no, Mr. Modi is not going to the US to meddle in their elections. Nobody dares meddle in US elections. Only the American establishment meddles in US elections. So they do it themselves. They don't need others, outsiders, to do that. Prime Minister Modi is going to the US to touch base again with the US establishment, whoever is really running the country, the US, and try and find some way forward in which is beneficial to both nations and which doesn't hurt and harm India too much. Because right now the US is all hammer against India, at least. It's doing regime change operations in India's neighborhood. It's bleeding India in Manipur. It's doing a regime change or trying one in Burma. It's trying to create a new artificial Christian nation, Cookie Land for Christ. Um, it's got Pakistan as its loyal vassal on the western frontier. So much. The US is all powerful right now. I think they have become way more powerful than we can imagine, perhaps. The Americans. I think ever since artificial intelligence has been announced, I think they may have AI systems that are at least 100 times more powerful than the best system that we are aware of, which would give them godlike capabilities. Maybe it's AGI or maybe it's ASI. AGI means artificial general intelligence, ASI means artificial super intelligence. So maybe they have god level capabilities already, and that's giving them this incredible level of confidence. And world leaders would know about what's going on. So, and maybe they have other technologies that we're not aware of. Maybe all the UFOs that only visit the US, maybe they are Lockheed Martin technology or Boeing technology. Who knows? Maybe Boeing is investing its good workers in these things. So maybe the US has already become invincible. That's a possibility. So, or maybe it's not. We don't know. It's all speculation that I'm doing right now. But Mr. Modi is going to the US to why does a world leader or the leader of a nation do anything? Their job is to serve the national interest. That's it, right? Every single thing a national leader does must, in some way or the other, serve the national interest. So, if Prime Minister Modi is going to the US, he's going on a trip designed to hopefully serve India's national interest in some way. Maybe by getting the US to back down a little bit on squeezing India, maybe finding some common ground on something. So essentially, you're going to a much more powerful nation, so you have to go as a supplicant and hopefully get something out of it. That's the long and the short of it. That's why he's visiting the US. We dare not meddle in their elections. The very suggestion is, well, I'm glad you made me smile. Okay. Lipton Barua says yesterday, Chakma Buddhist, Hajong, and Tripuri Hindus were killed in Rangmati, Diginala, and Khagrachari Sadar in the Chittagong division of Bangladesh. This is something that's been happening for decades. The Chittagong region should never have been part of Bangladesh, of East Pakistan. Why did our so-called founding fathers even accept Chittagong being part of East Pakistan? Why did they even accept Sylhet being part of East Pakistan? These are not Muslim dominated areas. We gave it up. The deal is that the British wanted these regions to be part of East Pakistan, especially Chittagong, because if Chittagong becomes part of India, then India's far east has access to the sea, and East Pakistan gets cut off on both sides, hemmed in by India. So that's why the British wanted the Chittagong region to be part of East Pakistan. And our wonderful leaders of that time, of the 1940s era, they went along with all these demands of the British, which was extremely detrimental to India's national interest. So, ever since, the Buddhists and Hindus who reside in this region, in the Chittagong region, they have been persecuted. They have endured decades of persecution. I'm not sure if anybody is still alive. I'm surprised that they're still able to kill Hindus and Buddhists. Chakmas and all Tripuris and all that. So that is something that's been going on for a very long time. I think during Sheikh Hasina's time, it was kind of not so bad, but now we have Bangladesh, which has turned into East Pakistan again. So it's resumed, and they'll probably ensure that. Uh, I don't even want to say it. So there you have it. We have East Pakistan that's been recreated. So all these things will happen. There is an ongoing genocide of Hindus and Buddhists happening in East Pakistan right now. Right now, as we speak. We sitting wherever we are with our families in our nice houses, comfortable, eating good food, and these people, our people, they don't know if they'll see tomorrow. That's the situation. And what can India do right now? Not a thing. Tells you, kind of puts India's power, hard power as a nation, in perspective, doesn't it? Okay. Let's see what other questions. Okay, let's see this one. Samsud Doha Rumi says the UK was the leader of the world, the most powerful most powerful entity before the Second World War. But after the Second World War, how is the US the leader of the world? And yet, how is the UK a friend of the US? Where the UK's power goes to the US? You have to understand to understand the answer to this question. You have to understand what constitutes power. Power. It's not like the UK gave its power to the US. That's not what happened. The UK was under siege during the Second World War. There was a time during the Second World War when the most powerful nation in Eurasia was Germany. And they had defeated everybody else. They'd taken France, they'd taken everybody, conquered everybody. Only the UK was left in Europe. So at that point in time, the UK was not the leader of the world. It was nothing. It was clinging to freedom somehow. There were nightly blitzkrieg raids on London, on the UK, by the German Luftwaffe. The UK was no leader of the free world of the world at the time. Germany was the most powerful nation. The UK was essentially reduced to almost helplessness. It was surviving because the Americans, let's go to the map. The UK was able to survive all these years because the Americans were sending in supplies through the Atlantic Ocean to the UK. The Germans knew about it, and this was causing friction between Germany and the US. So the UK was essentially reduced to nothingness during the Second World War. They still had their outposts in various parts of the world. They had Australia, New Zealand. They had their supply chains and various outposts, colonial outposts and whatnot across the world. But that is something the Americans took over. The Americans were still a free nation. They had access to the resources of an entire continent, North America. They were too far away from Germany or anybody else that anybody could touch them or harm them. And then they decided to enter the war. And they took over from the UK their entire global machinery, power production machinery, supply chains, assets, everything. They just took it over because they could. And the UK had no option. And that's how the US became the leader of the world. And they gave so much resources and whatnot to the UK that the UK went deep into debt. And they were repaying the debt to the US until the 21st century, the first decade of the 21st century. That's how long they had to repay the debt. That's how deep in debt the UK was to the US. And the US took over the entire global supply chains and machinery and assets and resources and everything that the UK had. They just took it over. And what could the UK do over it? Nothing, because the US was too powerful. That's how the world works. The US just took everything over. And the UK in 1956 tried its last gambit, the Suez Crisis, and the Americans just shut that down. And that was the official demotion of the UK to the ranks to the rank of a second or third rate global power. So now the UK, obviously, they have to save face. So they said that we are the allies of the US, friend of the US. They're not allies or friends of the US. They are a vassal of the US. As long as Margaret Thatcher was in power, the UK was kind of independent. To a large extent, sure, it was independent. But everything changed with the with Tony Blair coming to power. You know what people uncharitably called Tony Blair? They called Tony Blair George W. Bush's lapdog. Some would say it's uncharitable, some would say it's well deserved, but ever since that happened, the UK became, well, just like a white and rich version of Pakistan for the US, a vassal. That's it. So power comes from supply chains, power projection, hard power, military power, economic power, nuclear power, all that. And the US has that in abundance. All of that put together. All right. Um, McLovin says the 1993 Japanese anime movie of Ramayana is re-releasing in 4K next month in movie theaters across India in October. A great gift from Japan. I agree. I haven't seen that, and I will make sure I go to a movie theater somewhere near me and watch it because I hear it's one of the best Ramayans, best versions of the Ramayan ever made for the screen. And I think it will be released in multiple languages: English, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu. Not sure about Kannada, but multiple languages. So I certainly look forward to watching it. And in case the viewers, audiences are not aware of it, please do go and watch it. Yeah, one of the best versions of the Ramayana ever made. That's what I hear. Satish says, "How do you see illegal immigration, migration in Europe?" We are seeing this phenomenon, aren't we? Illegal immigration, illegal migration all across the Western world, into the Western world. It's happening in the US. The southern border has been opened up by the Biden regime, and millions of individuals have been allowed to cross over into the US, and they've been allowed to they've been transported to various parts of the US, far and wide, and they will all vote Democrat, obviously, right? So millions have come into the US. It's gonna change the US permanently, demographically, culturally, politically, etc. It'll permanently change the US. What about Europe? Millions of military age men, single men without families, are being brought into the various nations in Europe. France has had this problem for a long time. It's getting worse. Italy has had this. The Nordic nations, Denmark, Sweden, etc. Good God, they used to be really peaceful nations. Now there's rampant crime of various kinds, horrible kinds, all across there. The UK, oh good God, UK. Ah, things are really bad in the UK. In all these various European nations, illegal immigration, clearly illegal. It's against the law, but it's being allowed. And it looks like the UK, the EU leadership in Brussels has quotas for every nation, and they have to abide by these quotas and all that. We are witnessing probably the largest mass migration in known history, recorded human history. And we are not even recognizing that this is such a pivotal moment in history. The entire demographic and cultural destiny of the Western world is being rewritten right now. It's been re engineered right now by some power. One wonders what that power is. But the West is destroying itself. So, how do I see this? Well, it doesn't affect me. Of course, it affects the whole world, actually. It is going to affect the whole world in so many ways. First of all, we in the past used to look up to the West for its high standards, right? The West had high standards, living standards, rule of law, uh, efficiency of the governance machinery, and so on and so forth. So many things. You see a significant decline of those standards happening right now in the West. So much is going to change in the West. In a few years, Indians are always wondering which country do I go to settle down in. In the past, it used to be the US, Canada, Australia, England, sometimes New Zealand, otherwise various European nations. Now today, I'm sure Indians are wondering, where on earth do we go to settle down? Obviously, we want to escape India because of its abysmal living standards and all that, corruption, lack of merit. Okay, so on. So where do I go to settle down? In the past, if you were from Punjab, it used to be Canada. Canada is big. I wonder if Canada is that attractive, and it's still that attractive. The US has all these problems, social problems, societal problems. So we are witnessing probably the largest migration in recorded history. It's being engineered. This is the largest. It's also the largest example in history of demographic re-engineering, cultural, social, demographic, religious, political re-engineering. And imagine the power behind it, how powerful it has to be to do this on multiple continents. Even Japan is being forced to absorb undesirable immigrants. Japan is being forced into it. Japan is going to be destroyed by this. One of my favorite countries. Japan is going to be destroyed by this. They're in the process of destroying Japan demographically. They already destroyed it economically, haven't they? Now they're destroying it demographically. South America thus far is immune from this. Let's see how it goes, because the South American nations are all vassals of the US. They can't do a thing against the US. So my point is, we are witnessing the largest demographic, cultural, social, political, religious re-engineering in human history. We are living through it right now. We are witnessing one of the largest mass migrations in human history. And imagine how powerful you have to be able to engineer this all across multiple continents. So yeah, that's how I see illegal migration, not just in Europe, but everywhere else. Rahul Terwade says, please talk about the recent EY worker suicide case. Why no worker laws for white collar workers? We are made to work 12 hours a day, no weekdays, and then give 25% tax and then income tax. Okay, so I am not aware of this case. I've heard something vaguely, but I don't know the specific details. Okay, but the larger picture I'm aware. White collar workers. So there are two kinds of technically workers: blue collar, and white collar. Blue collar workers are those who work in labor, right? Construction work and physical labor and stuff. And white collar are the workers who sit in small little prisons, in offices, those little cubicles, and you work on a laptop or a computer or whatever. Whether it's in IT or whether it's in what, insurance or whatever. So I've been that in the past. I've done that. I've paid my dues. I've been a cyber coolie myself. Working for somebody 12 hours a day. And yes, in India we don't have any worker laws, labor laws, as far as I know, for white collar workers. Your employer can make you work as much as they want. So when I was a cyber coolie back in the day, it was not unusual for me to work 12-hour days, easy. I was lucky if I got one weekend off, one day in the week off. I remember there was a time when I worked like 24 days in a row, 12 plus hours a day. When you're young, when you have one precious job, you have few options. You can't do a thing. You got to say yes to whatever they say. They're going to keep on exploiting you, and you have to allow them to do that, because otherwise you're jobless. And I'm sure that's what people face today in India. You're made to work 12 hours a day, sometimes more. Sometimes you do night shift. Sometimes you work more than 12 hours a day. Sometimes you work weekends. Overtime is normal. If you leave at 5 p.m., 9 to 5, then you're a slacker. You should leave at least at 8 or 9 p.m. Then you are an average worker. But if you stay till 12 p.m. in the night, midnight, then you are a good worker. You do it every day. That's the kind of attitude you have. Managers in India are sadists very often. I've had a few of those managers back in the day. Pathetic people, very cruel, very evil. They'll micromanage everything. They will, yeah, I've seen a few of those, and I hear a lot of horror stories these days. So things are really bad. There seems to be very little regulation, and so it's kind of, one can see that some people would be driven to taking very rash and harsh decisions, such as what's happened. I'm sure there are many more cases like this, but somehow this case is being spoken about. And you see something similar in the education system, where you're you're trying for what, a government job, IAS job or whatever, or you want to get into the IIT, and you have to do it over and over again, and you go to quota or whatever, and so many kids, they give up on their lives because of the conditions. So yeah, that's the situation. What's the solution? The solution, well, there needs to be some government regulations, that employers can't just exploit people endlessly. And simply having regulations isn't enough. Regulations have to be enforced. In India, you have all kinds of laws, but nothing is enforced. That is the problem in India. One of the biggest problems in India is that there is no proper enforcement of laws, rules, regulations, but they're enforced when whoever it is feels like enforcing them. So, in selective enforcing and so on. So, the government has to intervene in these things. You need to have a healthy working environment. People can't be made to work endlessly, non-stop, like machines, like zombies, like robots. That's one thing that needs to happen. The other thing is, we need to have a better economy. People need to have options. Most people do jobs that they don't really want. Their dream job is something completely different, but they don't have the opportunity to do that. So you have to do this job or that job. So most people aren't even happy in whatever job they're doing, but it's the only job they have. Without that, there is no income. So you got to do it, compromise in life, and you do that until you're whatever retirement age, and then so things need to change. On the one hand, you need the economy to get bigger, stronger, which will create more opportunities for different kinds of jobs. And secondly, the government also needs to, like, create regulations and enforce them. So that's what I would say. I'm not aware of the specifics of the case. It's very sad, and it's something that's routine, unfortunately, this sort of treatment of workers in India. Okay. Ubendran says, what will India do if East Pakistan attacks or does stupid things on our border? Are we going to sit and watch US backed forces things happening to us, just like Manipur, or how will it be? Well, it depends. I don't think East Pakistan is in any position to attack India, do something stupid. Uh, we will we will definitely not allow them to cross the border if they try to. And militarily, their strength is nothing compared to that of India. So you need not worry on that front. The problem that can arise from East Pakistan is an upsurge in illegal immigration, and maybe the creation of a Manipur like situation somewhere else. Maybe, well, I'll not even take hypothetical names of places, because, yeah, why do that? So there are multiple things that can go wrong. They could see, Sheikh Hasina had cracked down on all the training that was and training and support that was being given to the northeast insurgents. So let's go to the map and let me explicate what I'm explicating here. So when it comes to India's far east, because of India, the various Indian governments and their horrible policies that we had towards this region in the 20th century, you had insurgencies in almost every state. In most states, you had multiple insurgent outfits who were fighting each other, who were fighting the government of India, and so on. It became so bad that in Mizoram, that in 1966, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had to order the Indian Air Force to bomb terrorist positions in Mizoram. So that's how it was. And a lot of the support for these insurgent outfits was coming from East Pakistan, which is currently Bangladesh. Some of it was coming from China also. The Chinese also wanted to, get involved in this, because why not? But a lot of this support, arms, ammunition, training, safe havens, all of that was coming in from East Pakistan. Then after 71, for some time there was a lull in this, but then there was the assassination of Mujibur Rahman, and then very rapidly this country once again became anti-India, and you had the same thing happening again. Support of insurgent groups from Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina put an end to it to a large extent, but now I believe it could start again. So that is the major threat that we face from East Pakistan. We already have the civil war in Burma and the cookie terrorists who have been pouring in from the eastern border. Now you may have something similar starting from the western border of this region of India with Bangladesh, and that is the big threat. So it's gonna be the government of India, the intelligence agencies, the security forces, all of them are gonna have their hands full. It's gonna be a difficult time for us, and at least this we have seen coming. I mean, the regime change in Bangladesh, I'm sure the government of India would have seen this coming. I saw this coming. I put out a video in 2023 about this, laying out the exact sequence of events that was going to cause the regime change. And it happened exactly like I said. So if I could make this prediction, I'm sure the government and the intelligence agencies saw this coming. So I'm sure that they are aware of the threats that we face because of the regime change in Bangladesh. And hopefully we are putting things in place to be able to appropriately and efficiently deal with these threats. That's what I think. Manipur is a whole different situation, and it also needs to be resolved. But yeah, there we are. Vikram Geopolitical says, do you think the US will be successful in carving out a Christian nation out of India, Myanmar, and Bangladesh? Like they did with Timor Leste in the early 2000s. See, it's like this. This cookie land for Christ, it will probably happen in Burma. Okay? It will become a de facto nation. It may not be a nation that's recognized by other nations, but it will become a de facto self-governing entity in Burma. And they will try and take some parts of Bangladesh and make those parts of Bangladesh ungovernable for the government of Bangladesh. And because the government of Bangladesh is now a US puppet regime, they may allow that region to become a de facto portion of cookie land. Then what these terrorists will want to do is make large parts of Manipur and Mizoram also not officially but de facto self-governed or governed by cookies. That's kind of already happening in Manipur. If you go to Churachandpur, the city of Churachandpur, beautiful place it used to be, it's been completely ethnically cleansed of the indigenous people of Manipur. Entire houses and regions have been destroyed, burned down, bulldozed. And I wonder how much presence the government of India has there. How much of a presence does the government of India have in Moreh? And so on. I think the whole south of Manipur is governed unofficially by the cookies, by the terrorists. So a cookie land could happen in this manner. So this region will technically and officially be part of India, but on the ground you will have These terrorists running the local governments, the local municipalities, they will be collecting the taxes and buying weapons with that. And that's the situation they would want to create. And that's the problem. So it won't become an official separate nation. It'll be a de facto separate nation. And some parts of it they want to be carved out of parts of India. And their objective is that those regions of India should have no presence of the Indian government or armed forces. That's the objective. I think it will be difficult for the US to achieve this, but in the process of trying to achieve it, it's going to make life hell for the Indian citizens, the natives of these regions who live there. That's the problem. Devavrat Singh says, what best advice will you give to someone who will pursue a career in physics research? India or abroad? Challenges. There is no physics research in India, very little. Go abroad. I have always been very clear about this. If you have opportunities, if you want to have a good career and you have opportunities abroad, go abroad. Absolutely go abroad. Uh, you don't have to sacrifice your whole life and career and stay in India just to prove your patriotism or your love for your country. You can love India while working abroad. So I would say that in India, there's very little physics research that happens. The academic system is horrible. It's full of politics. Unless you are in maybe the top 2 or 3 institutions for physics research in India, you will be able to do nothing. Especially if you are brilliant, then they will pull you down. Okay, the situation is horrible in India. So I would say go abroad. And if you're going abroad and you want to do physics research, if in case you're in theoretical physics, then you would be well advised to not swim against the tide, especially if you're in the US. If you're in the US, you want to do a PhD, and if you want to have a career in theoretical physics, you typically have to take string theory, because there's a whole mafia there, string theory mafia. If you're somewhere else in Europe or whatever, well, my advice is don't take a very difficult PhD topic. Take a good advisor. In India, you can't even choose your advisor. Okay, the university will decide who is going to be your advisor. In the West, you can choose your advisor. You can interview multiple advisors, potential advisors, and decide who is best for you. So choose a good advisor, somebody who's reasonably young, not somebody who's too old. And don't pick a very difficult topic for research. Get your degree quickly, and then do do whatever's right for the career. You need to get a job there, obviously. So once you are done with a PhD, you need to have a postdoc and all that, and then you have to get a job offer in a university. You need to have a certain number of publications. All the rules, you have to abide by them. You have to exceed them, and you have to learn the local language and all that. In India, it's all English. In Europe, you have to learn the local language. In the US, it's English, obviously. UK also. So that's what I would say. So my first advice is go out of India. Secondly, do your research quickly. Don't pick a very difficult research topic, and make sure your fundamentals are really clear, really good. And obviously, you have to work really hard. So that's what I would say. My main advice is pursue a career outside of India. Until the government of India cleans up the education system, there is no point me telling intelligent and bright young people to stay in India. Okay, I would be doing you a great disservice by giving you that wrong advice. So please go out of India. That's best for you. McLevin says things are really turning bad for this government. Do you think they'll finish this term? Look, I answered this question before. I don't know. Things are difficult. Look, when in 2014, Narendra Modi was a completely new phenomenon on the global stage, and the West did not quite know how to deal with him. They did not know what he was capable of. They did not know what his objectives were. They did not know what his methods would be. There was a tremendous amount of concern in the West that this guy would totally transform India. The fear was that he would genuinely transform India, change the constitution, change the governance system, make it genuinely something that serves the country and the people, transform the education system, promote Indian culture. These were the big fears. Well, from the Western perspective, none of those fears have come true. Mr. Modi has not transformed the education system. He's done nothing to change it. He's not transformed the governance machinery. It's still all bureaucrats, same IAS stuff. He's not done anything to turn India into a cultural superpower. He's not made India a Hindu Rashtra. He's done none of those things. He's only worked on the Indian economy. So today, 10 years after 24, after 2014, today the Americans know exactly what Narendra Modi is, exactly what his government is like, what his methods are, what his policies are. They know everything. They know how to deal with this government. And now it's no longer even a government with a full majority. So yes, things are bad. The heat is on. Regime change has happened in our neighborhood. There are moves being undertaken right now to change the map of India, if not officially, then de facto, in the far east of India. Manipur is under siege. Things are really bad for this government, and it's a coalition government. So will they finish this term? I don't know. I hope they do, but I don't know. Because when you have coalition partners who are outside of your party, they are under no obligation to obey you. And they can always be influenced by external factors, sources, whatever. So, hypothetically, it may be possible in the future at some point in time to influence some of one or more of the coalition partners into withdrawing support, in which case the government falls, unless somebody else comes to the aid, which I don't know about that. So it's a difficult situation for the Modi government. They could have no point talking about what they could have done in the past, but here we are. So I think it's difficult to say whether they will finish this term. It's not guaranteed that the Modi government will finish the term, but I don't know. Can't make a prediction. Too many factors involved in this. Okay, Vishak, let's take your question. I've seen it a few times. Okay. Question is, some insights on US President Dwight Eisenhower's warnings about US military industrial complex being a threat to the US democracy. And what is the US military industrial complex? Okay, let's talk about that first. The military industrial complex of the US is a grouping, well, they're not grouped together, but it's those companies, corporations, etc., that manufacture military hardware. And these are enormous corporations, enormous companies, and who manufacture tremendous quantities of military hardware. Generally, it's very complicated, very advanced hardware. Costs millions, billions of dollars, some of it. I mean, a submarine, US submarine, will cost a few $1 billion. US aircraft carrier, at least $10 billion. And various other armed systems. If you talk about the F-35s, they cost in excess of $100 million. Right? So very advanced, very sophisticated weapon systems, and most of these are exported, right? And the amount of money that pours into these companies' coffers is incredible, immense, which gives them tremendous leverage. How so? It gives them the ability to have lots and lots of Congress people on their side, House of Representatives people on their side, so they can buy political power, essentially. In the US, in the US, you could say corruption is legal. It's called lobbying. If you do it a certain way, it's legal. So you can buy influence. You can buy people outright. So these companies have become incredibly powerful. So powerful that it is alleged, they shape US foreign policy, military policy. And they essentially want wars to keep on going on or happening worldwide so that they can sell their weapons to various factions that are fighting wars, countries, and so on. So the entire economy of these companies depends on wars going on all the time in the world. So if there is peace globally, then these companies, their economy will crash, and their profit margins will crash to zero, and they'll go bankrupt. And these companies are, they probably have all the US politicians in their pockets. So that's the US military industrial complex. And it essentially, you could say, was born during the industrial rush of the Second World War era. It revived the US economy. And that's when the American politicians, everybody realized that the war is the biggest boon for the US economy. Because the 1930s was this time of the Great Depression. And the US economy was in the was depressed at the time. And the war revived the US economy and turned the US into a superpower. And that's something that Dwight Eisenhower realized. And when he was demeeting office, he made this famous speech in which he issues this warning about the US military industrial complex, about how it can be a threat to US democracy and all that. And he was right, obviously. From my perspective, the last truly democratically elected US president who who truly tried to change things was JFK, John F. Kennedy. And we know what happened to him, what was done to him. And his little brother, Robert, also ran on the same election agenda, and we know what happened to him as well. So both the brothers were taken out. After that, everybody got the message, and nobody has dared to rock the boat ever since. So there we are. There we are. That's the US military industrial complex. That's how powerful it is. And I'm sure, well, it is said that it's part of the deep state, the real establishment that runs the country. We know that the US is not really run by the president. We know that by now. I think even a person with half an eye can see that the US president isn't really in charge of the country, isn't really in power. It's just a face, it's just a puppet. The real power lies somewhere else. In case you have read the great book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, let's Google it. What Douglas Adams says about the president of the galaxy, shall we? Okay, let's go to Google. Okay, let's see. Douglas Adams about president of the galaxy. Okay, let's see this. He was quite a guy, Douglas Adams. So here's the quote from that book. The president in particular is very much a figurehead. He wields no real power whatsoever. He's apparently chosen by the government, but the qualities he's required to display are not those of leadership, but those of finely judged outrage. For this reason, the president is always a controversial choice, always an infuriating but fascinating character. His job is not to wield power, but to draw attention away from it. That is the role, the job of the president of the galaxy in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. Okay, it's a fictional book. It's a book about existential philosophy disguised as humorous science fiction, essentially. But that's what Douglas Adams wrote all those years ago. And that applies exactly to the US and its presidents. Anish says, a few months ago, I was in Egypt. Okay. I saw the pyramids and statues that are 5,000 or so years old. I felt envious and sad. The IVC, the Indus Valley Civilization, or the Saraswati Sindhu phase of Indian history, that its geographical extent was larger than that of Kemet or Egypt. Yet not much of that antiquity has survived here. Actually, see, here's the deal. In India, we did not invest our resources in building monumental architecture, gigantic architecture, which is awe-inspiring but serves no purpose for society. Imagine in a hypothetical universe, our ancestors in the Saraswati Sindhu phase of India's civilization, they had built colossal pyramids. How would those pyramids have served society? In no way whatsoever. So the pyramids that the Egyptian kings built, we don't quite know what their purpose was. We do not know what their purpose was. Okay, they were not tombs of the pharaohs. Not a single Egyptian mummy has been found in these pyramids, but we don't know what their purpose was. But they exist. But imagine what a colossal drain of the nation's resources these pyramids would have been, the construction. And what purpose did it serve? We're not quite sure. Probably it's just to glorify the king. That's all it was, to represent how glorious and powerful he is. Perhaps that's the purpose. Of course, these are gigantic, monumental constructions, and they are awe-inspiring. And that's one of the things that's most famous about Egypt, apart from the Sphinx. And it's a source of pride for Egyptians, sure. But when it comes to the IVC, what you call the IVC or the Saraswati Sindhu civilization, it was a phase of our civilization, and our civilization is unbroken. We are a continuity of that. So the geographical extent of that, the so-called IVC, was bigger than Egypt and Mesopotamia put together. Let's go to the map and see what's Egypt and Mesopotamia. One second, where's the map? Here is map, yes. So the IVC or Saraswati Sindhu civilization phase was bigger in geographical extent than Egypt and Mesopotamia put together. Mesopotamia is roughly like 1/3 of Iraq, or let's say whole of Iraq. If you put Egypt and Iraq together, that combined land area is smaller than the geographical extent of the so-called IVC. That's how big it was. And the IVC was characterized by an urbanized civilization, a fully urban, fully industrialized civilization. Um, a continuity of culture everywhere, standardization of weights and measures, colossal architecture in the sense that the ports and the harbors, Lothal, Dholavira, etc., are examples, were so large that they compare favorably in size with today's Vishakhapatnam, where aircraft carriers can be accommodated. That's how big the ports were. But yeah, it doesn't look as magnificent as a pyramid, but it was way more advanced. The hydro engineering, the overall engineering was beyond what the Egyptians had. So we had a fully urban civilization, multi-storied buildings, standardization of weights and measures in an area larger than Egypt plus Mesopotamia put together. And we have excavated less than 2% of the archaeological sites. Okay, more than 98% of the archaeological sites are unexcavated. Imagine what is waiting for us in there. The truth about our history is waiting for us in there. Someday we'll do it. I think it's good that these are unexcavated. At least nobody is looting and pillaging them and the artifacts. So that's the deal. I know it feels sad to see another country in their civilization, they're having monumental architecture. We don't have that, but we have some of that. We have very ancient temples, very beautiful architecture. The main thing was our culture was such that we did not waste money on pointless symbols. Everything had a purpose. So that's how one looks at it in context. Let's talk about aliens. Varun Warrior says NASA committee who studies UFOs and aliens. How do you think this will help in alien research? Any findings based on the studies? I am not aware of this. I am not aware of any NASA committee that studies UFOs and aliens, but let's say they have it. Well, good for them. How do I think this will help in alien research? I have absolutely no idea. Maybe some aliens are on the committee. That will be fun. Have aliens actually made contact with the US government? Why only the US government? Why not the Uzbekistan government? Why not Namibia? Why the US? Why is it always the US? What I think is that, look, there seems to be way more sightings of unexplained phenomena. But UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena, they call them, right? Not just flying saucers or unidentified flying objects, but unexplained or unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. And there seems to be way more of that in the US than anywhere else in the world. What, from a logical perspective, what does it tell me? It tells me that there is some technology they have developed that they are testing in their skies. And that's unlike anything else that is known to the world. And that's why people construe that as UFOs and aliens. But maybe it is Boeing, maybe it's Lockheed Martin, maybe it's SpaceX. Have you thought about that? And because people believe it's aliens, and because you want to keep the technology secret, you say, okay, NASA is going to have a committee that will study UFOs and aliens. And then you form a committee and you make them go through the process, but nothing's going to happen. So there's going to be no findings from these committees, because I think that this technology is actually secret American technology that's that's generations ahead of what the publicly disclosed technology looks like. That's what I think. Feminist Slayer says, my ancient history teacher, sir, is a guy. So it's a sir. So in India, if you say teacher, it's a lady. If it's a sir, it's a guy. It's a man, right? So my ancient history sir was saying that Aryans came from Western Europe and they were immigrants, not invaders. And they intermingled with local people on their way towards entering India. So that's the new version of the same old theory, isn't it? Earlier, it used to be an invasion theory, Aryan invasion theory. They came on horses, they came with chariots, they came with swords, and they had swastikas, and they destroyed and defeated the local poor black skinned Dravidians. And their descendants are the North Indians and West Indians, evil invaders, Brahmins, Brahminical religion, Hinduism, evil, caste system, bad, so on. That's the original story. But archaeologists were able to find no sign of any invasion. So they had to change the story. And now the Aryan invasion theory is converted into the Aryan migration theory. And so your ancient history sir is still stuck in the 20th century concept, Aryan migration theory. The Aryan migration theory was constructed out of the invasion theory in the 20th century. So that's something they tried. But once again, there is no archaeological evidence of a migration. None. Even a migration will give you archaeological evidence, signs, unmistakable signs and evidence of migration. Cultural change happens when there's a migration. You will see certainly different kinds of buildings with different architecture and different religious symbols and different cultural signs. You see nothing in India. You see 10,000 years of cultural continuity in India. So even the migration theory is false. Now they have some genetic arguments and all that. The crux of the matter in the Aryan invasion, migration, tourism, picnic myth, the core, what is the core claim of these theories? What is the core claim? The core claim of these theories is that Hinduism and Sanskrit are foreign to India. That is the core claim. Have they been able to prove any of that? How will they can make claims? Can they prove it? I challenge them to prove it. Prove that Hinduism and Sanskrit came from outside of India. We have unmistakable evidence of Hindu practices going back 8, 9,000, 9,500 years in India. We have unmistakable archaeological evidence of that, hard evidence. So how did then Hinduism come with these so-called migrants or picnic goers 3,500 years before today? Their claims fall flat on their faces when you look at evidence and you use logic. So your sir is a typical Indian sir. Okay, doesn't think, doesn't read research, doesn't apply logic, all about memorize. Whatever is in the textbook is is the word of the gods. That's the kind of sir you have, and that's what most sirs and madams and teachers are like. They have no real interest in the subject. If you're interested, you will actually want to know what's happening right now in the field of research. No interest. It's just a job for them. Just a job. Sad. Lipton Barua says Romans copied the Greek gods, but what about the Roman god Janus? Janus, whatever you say, was a two-faced god. Let's look up. It's a god of lies. The god. It's a god of lies. I think the liar god. Janus god. Can you see this? A god with two faces. And what was this? What was the god all about? God of transitions, etc., etc. So yeah, so I'm not sure what is the origin of this god. I'm sure it's not possible to find a Greek origin for every single Roman god. I'm sure the Romans had some gods of their own that date back to the pre-Roman Empire times, but I'm not sure what that was. And I'm sure that Wikipedia article makes some claims about what the origin of this god was, but maybe it's true. I don't know. So yes, I agree that Janus was not a Greek god, because the Greek gods are the gods of the Vedic pantheon, with some additions. Priapus is not a Vedic god. For sure. And there are some others as well. So they had some of their own gods too, but most of the Greek gods are from the Vedic pantheon. Jupiter, Thor, sorry, Jupiter is Thor, Jupiter is Indra, and so many more. I'm sure the Romans, the thing about the Romans was wherever they conquered, they absorbed the culture and made it their own. So they did not just merely bring wealth back from their colonies, they brought gods also back from the colonies, and then they would worship those gods as well. Mithraism, for example, the worship of the bull, the worship of Mithra. Mithra, who is with Mithra? Mithra Varun. Through Persia, through Greece, they acquired Mithra. And they had this, the Mithraic mysteries was one of their religious sects. So I'm not sure about the origin of the Roman god Janus, but I'm sure they acquired him from somewhere. And they were very fond of collecting gods. The more gods bless you, the better it is for in life, isn't it? And so on. Okay. Max says, why do many Indians call women madam? Madam is a bad word. Look, madam is a bad word in a certain context, but only in that context. The origin of the word madam is the French term madame. Madame means my lady. Okay? My dame or my lady. It is a term of respect. But yes, in certain contexts, madam can be seen as a bad word. You don't need to use the word in that context, obviously. Now, at the end of the day, it's a foreign word for us, right? So it's just a consequence of colonization, mental colonization, that we use a foreign language and the words that come along with that. So there you have it. But overall, it has a good meaning. Okay, the root word is French, madame, my lady, which is respectful. Okay, with that, I have come to the end of today's session. Lots of questions we've taken up in various topics. I'm glad we covered aliens and UFOs as well. So I'll end this live stream over here. Thank you so much for everybody for all your questions, for your participation, for your viewership. Apologies to those of you whose questions I could not take. Tomorrow I'm going to take another live stream in which I will take questions from the comments. So ask questions with the hashtag AskAbhijit in the comments, and I'll take them tomorrow, as many as I can. Until then, take care and keep raising your standards. See you soon. Bye.